Hey y'all, just wanted to give a little update. It's been a minute. I have been busy looking for employment, and I was just thinking about how I took this drive, a long trip recently, and I started thinking about levels of certainty when it comes to changes in this simulated world around us, or whatever it is, this matrix thing. There's things that you absolutely know have changed, and then you've got this other whole level of, well, not 100% certain. And I was thinking about the numbers. I have probably dozens that are 100% absolute. And then that certainty bar starts to slide back a little, 99%, 98, 97. But if you slide that bar back enough, I'm sure that the changes that I've seen in reality, just for known Mandela effect, goes above 1,000. And then I'm not sure if you can categorize this as a Mandela effect. I consider any change in reality that just occurs and you know it changed to be in the same family in a lot of ways. So there's this sliding bar of certainty, and then there's just things that you notice are different now. And there's always the person who can, object and say, well, your memory's not perfect, you don't know for certain maybe you just missed it. And that was the reason I started this channel in 2016, because things were happening around me and changing, like like right there in real time. It wasn't like a distant memory. Hey, I remember this used to be a certain way. Things were flip-flopping and changing. So I decided to document immediately the things that I was seeing, so that the whole argument years later that maybe you just remembered it wrong wouldn't be used. So I talked about, a lot of things immediately, shortly after they occurred, just to document it, just to get it on the record. Hey, this isn't a faulty memory. This just happened right before my eyes. But then there's other things too. You've been on this planet for half a century, and there's certain things you should have seen before if that's the way it is, and yet they're brand new to me. So many strange animals and insects and plants that never had heard of. That doesn't mean that it necessarily was an addition to reality. Maybe it's just something that I had never seen before. I'll grant anybody that. But after 50 years, a lot of these things are so bizarre, you would think that I would have taken notice. Just on this road trip, I noticed two odd things. One, several large signs, with the galvanized steel post. Um, Rather large road signs were toppled over, but nothing else was, no trees or things like that to indicate like a storm or anything. And this, I noticed a lot of them were over, and that this went on for hundreds of miles. So I didn't understand what that was about. And is that what would have caused it? A lot of, my wheels are turning like, why? Why is this even here? And then I look at reality as just not even real anyway. So I'm thinking, is something placing that there? Is it telling me to look at the signs? Is there a double meaning? Sorry, I've got dumb dog in the background, which means the trash man was here finally. Anyway, so I'm looking at that, and certainly something might be going on there that might make sense. And these signs were toppled over not neatly; they were like twisted up. One post would be broken, the other would be fine. The sun would be down. It just looked odd. It looked like either something crashed into them or a storm ripped through. But that was the only thing that was damaged. Nothing else. Didn't make a lot of sense. But the other thing I noticed, and I've never seen this before, maybe it's new. Maybe this is a new thing, that cars towing other cars. You'll see like three cars in a row. The bumpers are removed on front and back, and there's this hard shaft connecting them. And there's three of them. I don't know if that's a new way of towing cars, and they never did that before, or if I were to, look deeper and find out they've been doing this for the last 20 years. I don't know, but I guarantee it's the first time I've ever seen it. And I hear I'm on a road trip, and I must have seen that um, I saw that about 10 times. 10 times there were vehicles in tow in that manner, and I've never seen that in my life. So you just stop and wonder, is that a change to this reality? Am I hold on one second. So I'm wondering, am I in a new reality? Is this an addition or modification of this reality, or is this just something natural that they've just started doing and I've just never noticed? I'd have to dig in and see. I wouldn't be surprised if I found out they've been doing this for a long time and I've just never noticed it, apparently, or it's something. If it's been happening a long time, it's definitely new to me. It's new to this reality. It's a change to my current reality, or maybe it's just something people are doing now. I don't know. I came across this stuff all the time at first. I remember like the word gaslighting. I'd never heard that expression before, the Mandela effect. Then everybody was suddenly using it. Gaslighting was everywhere. And it turns out there's this movie from the 60s or whatever that was all about gaslighting. Now, have people been using this term frequently for my whole life and I've just never heard it before and it just suddenly popped into my view, or did people just start using it because it became trendy for whatever reason, or has it always been used and I never noticed it, and is it a change to reality? I know that people use certain phrases and it becomes a fad for a little while. I just like I notice in my work world, cadence. I'm so sick of people. I won't use the word. People use cadence all the time and bandwidth, and I don't know. It's just this corporate weaselese type of talk where they have to use certain phrases to sound popular. I remember when preaching in the choir was preaching to the choir. I mean, you're preaching to the choir, everybody would say, and it comes, it goes, and that could be all very natural, but there's some things in reality. I wonder, is that just a flat out change in my uh, initial surroundings? Is something edited my reality? Have I popped into a different reality? Regardless, it's still the same to me. Or am I truly mistaken? Is this truly something I just missed? There's a big sliding scale of certainty and uncertainty that goes with those. But a more higher level of certainty is things like the book The Portrait of Dorian Gray, which never existed. It's always been the picture. And I know it's always been the portrait. And the reason I bring it up is I was just watching this show the other day, and it was like the life of Mary Tyler Moore, and she was being interviewed, and she made reference to the portrait of Dorian Gray. And these kind of Mandela effects keep flashing into my reality as reminders. It's not a whole lot of new things coming up. It's just the thousands of old things that I knew have changed keep popping up around me and being made reference to in their original sense, which I thought that was funny. So just wanted to mention that there is a sliding scale of certainty after you get past the few dozen of my 100 percenters. There's a whole bunch of 99s and 98s, and I'd be lying if I didn't allow for a certain tinge of doubt, just maybe, what if. But I've had enough absolute for certains to know that things can change around me. In the blink of an eye, things can change. Everything can change. That allows for miracles and magic, or whatever word you want to use. It allows for a lot of crazy things. It allows for this world to be something of a like a gaming situation. It feels like that. It feels like it's not fully real. So you look around at it and you wonder, is there somebody and I always felt like this when things were changing around me. I felt like some divine presence, some unseen force was guiding me. It was guiding me to look in a certain direction, to take note of something, and then immediately or within a short period of time, it would show me a change to that specific thing that I was guided to look at. So I felt like my direction and gaze was guided the entire time. It was all about like revealing to me that things around me can change. And now it's not so much. And to be honest, my interest is not as high as it used to be because I just know it can change. I don't need to prove it to myself anymore. So there's not a lot of effort going into hunting down or looking for any type of specific change. But that being said, I I still enjoy seeing some for sure changes. Every once in a while I'm told if somebody's saying, "Hey, I just saw a whole neighborhood appear and it never existed before." Absolutely guaranteed it never existed before. That's pretty cool. Ernie told me about that one. Things like that are fun to experience because it's just a reminder that this whole reality is just not 100% real. But we're still here. We're still forced to live in it. We're still forced to play the game. And a big part of that game is maintaining some sort of way to keep food on the table, to keep shelter, basics to be provided. I've been out of work twice in the last year since June of last year. I took a job that I thought was going to be a good gig, and it was a no brainer. I mean, it was one of those things that if you're playing a tournament of Texas Hold'em, you'd this is the deck that you have to go all in on. This was the hand that it made no sense to not accept the job. It was too good of a deal to just ignore. So I took the job only to find out that it's one of these deals where you're working for a big international company and they have contracts with other big international companies. So I was working for this big company and there was a client, and that client just was never interested from day one, was never interested in talking to me, was in a relationship, I believe romantic, or trying to get it to be romantic with one of my subordinates, a person who was young, attractive, and had no real management experience at all. But that person was sitting in a seat of power because the client was only interested in talking to that person. And I could see I was being set up to be pushed out. So why is this thing happening to me? Why am I taking this seemingly great position just to get set up and pushed out 5 months later? Actually, they would have pushed me out sooner, but I put up a bit of a fight and I caused a lot of problems, and that extended me to get pushed out at 5 months instead of three. So went for a few months with no paycheck, completely nothing coming in at all at the time. I was quickly draining my resources, running out of money fast. Had a couple of decent interview prospects, but every time I told people that things were not going well at the current job or I was terminated, that just ended it. I did not go further along with their interview process. So the one job that I was talking to, I I was still working for this company when I first talked to them, but was terminated in the middle of the process. And that one hired me at a greatly reduced pay. So with my added expenses and that discounted pay, I still wasn't making enough to cover the bills. We're still draining the reserve, but it wasn't drained as quickly, but it was still going down fast. So then, I'm still not sure. And this job was a beatdown too. This was a different sort of beatdown where the client and the company I worked for. So the company I worked for was a big international company, just the same, but they talk about providing great customer service and things like that. They were on the backside of a 5-year contract that was about to come to an end, and the client was super demanding and kind of low class. I mean, they they were unsophisticated in their management style, very beneath me in so many ways, and I went in every day with this stupid, you know, unprofessional, yelling, whining, constantly crying like a child, demanding that I fix things with the most unrealistic expectations I've ever seen. And even though I was making great strides and getting a lot of things done, there was no appreciation for the stuff that I was bringing in and implementing. It was a miserable situation. And then the big international company was cringing because I was spending their money. I was honoring the contract as it was written, but they did not want to give me supplies, resources. I didn't have enough vehicles for the staff. The vehicles were not getting maintained. I wasn't getting approval to spend money. I needed 3 times the staff that I had. I was barely scratching the surface on what was really needing to satisfy that contract. So all odds were against me. But another company that I had interviewed with back before this current company, that this old company that was a huge company, called me back because they passed on me the first time because I told them I was terminated. They passed on me, And then they wanted me back, or they wanted to talk to me again because they had a big upheaval and change in their management. So they started talking to me, and I just decided I wasn't going to tell them anything was negative at all. I just let them go with the first resume that I was first interviewing with them on. I didn't tell them that I was terminated. I didn't even tell them that I was no longer working there. I figured, what the heck? They're not going to hire me if I go forward with. They're not going to have any interest. So, long story short, I think I interviewed for another 3 months. It was just the slowest process. And when I finally got the offer letter, substantial amount, had an offer letter and a start date, I told them, look, I don't know if you're going to want me after I tell you this, but I got to come forward and be honest with you. I was terminated from that last position. So they, the guy who I was interviewing with kind of sounded like, well, that could raise some questions, but let's just go ahead and run with it. So he ran me through their background check. I passed. They gave me a new start date. I went ahead and gave a resignation at the current company I was working at, which was a beatdown, but I gave that resignation. And then I found out, oh, there's another round of background checks that I need to do with the client. And that one was even more stringent. And I didn't know if I was going to get the job. So that took another month. On top of that, the guy who I'd been talking to for the last 3 or 4 months, he resigned. He had another opportunity and he was relocating. So now I've got a total new face, total new person that I'd only met once in the interview process. I have no idea whether or not I have a job, and I put in my notice at my current job, so I lost any source of income, 100% no income, and now I'm back to draining the reserves, and there's almost nothing left. Starting to use a credit card and not trying not to pay, doing the shuffling of the debt, playing those games, getting a little nervous about what was going to happen. Really getting a little nervous and wondered, why is this reality doing this? Why is this reality trying to keep me in a high state of anxiety? Because that's what it was. It was like going to work and getting yelled at by unrealistic demands, and then not getting support from the company that I was employed by, knowing the contract was coming out, seeing the money run down. It was all high anxiety to the point where I wasn't sleeping at night. It's interesting. The day I gave my notice, that day, even though I didn't know if I was going to get hired at another job and if I was going to really be in bad shape financially, I started to sleep again at night. It made all the difference. Sorry about the background noise. I've got dogs, but I started to sleep again, so that was good. And I started to realize that even if I don't have a source of income, and if this other job denies me, we can there's still a backup plan where I can sell off essentially the investments we have for retirement. I could sell all that off and probably, get through a few more months, 3 to 6 months, maybe 6 months, and have time to look for a decent career and position to shift into. So that was going to be the backup plan. So I was sleeping fine. I wasn't feeling anxiety. I was putting in God's hands, and at the same time, I was really not wanting to liquidate and sell everything off. I wasn't wanting to go to that level. But long story short, this job came through. I started next Monday, and we'll see. We'll see if it's going to be another. If it's another beatdown and a horrible situation, I don't know what. Maybe I'll have to retire completely. But we're going to give this one a good shot. We're going to give it you know, the old college try, and looking forward to, I guess, seeing what's there. But I've been enjoying my time off in the meantime, and just enjoying having a true break without a whole lot of stress to it. But anyway, just wanted to give the update and share with you what's going on in the sliding scale of certainty with the Mandela effects. And sorry, my phone's flipping around because I'm walking. Anyway, catch you later. God bless. Oh, wait, there's one more thing I want to say about this reality. If there's an objective, if there's a goal, if there's a risk factor in living this life, like you play this game wrong and there's huge consequences at the end of the line. I know I did that playlist on hell. That'll sober you up big time. One of the reasons I started looking at NDEs is I wanted to refresh my memory of what it was like when I was first Mandela affected and when I had the God experience and how great it felt, how fresh it felt, how good it felt to be walking daily and feeling like God is with you, just feeling that presence and being to talk to God all day long and stuff like that. So I started listening to those, came across the hellish ones, wanted to really listen to a bunch of those and get a little deeper in their experiences, and those are good for giving you that motivation that you might need to drop a bad habit or something, whatever. It's just they have that motivating effect. I still don't like to believe. I don't like thinking that there's the some of the descriptions on those testimonies are pretty rough. I don't like to believe that that's an eternal situation. I don't like that, but I don't have to worry about it. It's not my place. It's not my place to be the judge, jury, and the setup of how things work. At this point, I'm just content to feel that inner spark of optimism and feeling God is with me and that I can talk to Him throughout the day, and living in a way that um, things, living clean. I guess just living clean. It feels good. But as far as spiritual objectives, I hear people talk about spiritual growth, and I've heard a few people talk about spiritual growth, and there's different definitions for what spiritual growth means. So for some people out in this community, spiritual growth, and this is kind of, I think, more of a Gnostic position, it's all about gaining knowledge and self confidence, confidence in yourself. And the Christian version of spiritual growth is learning to trust God more, having faith more, walking humbly, and doing good and serving others, putting others before yourself, and living humbly before God, and trust and faith and all that. Submission to God's greater plan. So that's a different definition for spiritual growth than gaining esoteric knowledge, hidden knowledge, occult knowledge, and having self confidence that you are God. That's completely almost an opposite definition for spiritual growth. But I've heard spiritual growth used in that fashion. So I wanted to specify my idea of spiritual growth is the one where you're submitting and humbly walking before God. And everybody's going to have to make that decision on which their definition is of spiritual growth or what that is to them. But whatever it is, I hope everybody chooses well and has a great day, and God bless.